Hi, welcome back to the workshop for episode 10 of the Micawber Telecaster build and what has to be my favourite part of the guitar building process, carving the neck. But because this is one of my favourite parts of the process, I'm going to go into a lot more detail than I otherwise would do. So this is going to get broken down into two videos. The first one will be dealing with the central section of the neck, and the second video will look at the transitions at the headstock and the heel. So I've had a word with the customer and asked him what kind of profile he would like on the neck, and he's asked for the profile that's on his favourite guitar. Yeah, it's a Les Paul. Now, if you want to scream sacrilege at building a Telecaster neck with a Les Paul profile, you have that prerogative. However, it is worth bearing in mind that this is a custom-made instrument, so why go to the time and trouble of having an instrument specifically made for you if it's not going to be made exactly how you want it? So to that end, we're going to use this neck as a template for the neck that we're going to carve. So I've been over it with my vernier and I've measured at the 12th and at the 1st fret for the width of the neck in those positions, and that's actually very similar to what we have on the neck blank for the Telecaster, so I don't think we need to do any alterations there. Okay, so next up I'm just going to slacken the strings off a bit. To a point where I can slide the vernier underneath them. And I'm going to measure the thickness of the neck, not the fret, but the actual neck. At the 1st fret, we'll call that 21 mil for the sake of argument, and do the same thing at the 12th fret. Okay, with that done, I'm then going to break out my profile gauges. And I've taken a rough template. The 1st fret, and also one of the 12th fret. And what I'll do is I'll make some rough templates out of paper and masking tape and refine these until they actually really fit the neck nicely. And then I'll transfer that onto some thicker stock, probably some 3mm ply or something, and actually cut the proper templates that we'll use on the build. Okay, so to move this on, I've done some work off camera in preparation for the actual carve itself. Starting with, I've taken the paper templates that I created with the template gauge. I've stuck a couple of layers of masking tape to the back of them, and then I've cut them out as accurately as I can. With them cut out, I've then taken them to the guitar neck and made sure that they're kind of in the ballpark of where we need them. From there, I've then made a couple of more permanent plywood templates, and then I've fitted these exactly to the guitar neck. So these are a really good close fit now. I've also taken the neck holding jig that I created for the precision bass build I did a few weeks ago, and I've adapted that to fit the Telecaster neck. And with this in its fixture, I've also done some marking out. The lines are quite faint, but you might be able to make them out. I've marked at the 12th and the 1st frets, and I've also marked the centre line on the side of the neck and centre line on the top, but I've also then divided the 2 halves of the back of the neck into halves as well. As well as that, I've roughed out how I want the transitions to look on both the headstock and the heel of the neck. And the way I'm going to go about carving this, and if you've seen me carve a neck before, this won't be any surprise, but I'm effectively going to rough out the profile at the 1st fret. I'll rough out the profile at the 12th fret. Once I've carved in my profiles at the 1st and 12th fret, I'll then use these lines that I've marked in to carve the first couple of facets onto the neck. With that done, I will then remark, halving the facets that I've got, and then carve those down again until eventually we'll get to the point where we've got an almost neck-shaped piece of wood. From there on in, it's just a matter of refining it, making sure everything's straight and kind of sanding it, etc., until we get to a point where we have the carve that we want. With that done, we can then turn our attention to the transitions and get it all finished off. Okay, so let's get the process started, and the first thing we need to do is get the profile cut at the first fret. Now, there's a lot of material to move here, so we can't really mess around with it too much, so I'm just going to go in with a rasp. Okay, so that's the first fret fitted up. So the template, it's still a little bit proud. So there's a little bit more material on there than we need, but that's good. That means we've got something to play with. I've also checked with the vernier, took it off the jig and just checked this thickness here, and that's about 1 mil fatter than we want it. So that gives us plenty of scope to play with that later on. So now all I'm going to do is do exactly the same thing on the 12th fret. Okay, so we've now got the template for the 12th fret pretty much there. We're where we need to be, and we're also at the thickness that we need. So with that done, it's now time to start taking off some of these facets. Now, there's a variety of ways you can do this. At this stage, it's not particularly precise work, so there isn't a problem with it. One method I've used in the past is with a spoke shave, and you can just take it down that way. That's not set particularly heavy at the moment, so it is quite a fine cut. And that's a perfectly valid way of doing it. It can take quite a long time. Could continue with a rasp. The problem I have with the rasp is it's quite a crude tool. It does take a lot of material off, but it doesn't do it in a particularly clean way. So what I really love using, and it's pretty much becoming the standard for this kind of job now in the guitar making world, is the Shinto saw rasp. If you haven't seen these, they're absolutely brilliant. If you haven't got one, get one. It's like hacksaw blades all riveted together in like a lattice, and it's very, very aggressive on one side and slightly less aggressive on the other side, but regardless of the amount of material that it takes off, it leaves a really nice clean finish. So basically I'm just going to have at this now with the Shinto until I've got the first 2 facets cut in, and then we'll come back and mark out the rest of it. You might also notice I seem to be acquiring a really good collection of band-aids today. I've just rammed that finger into the vise whilst I was rasping on the first transition. It's not a bad cut, but it's leaking blood everywhere, and I don't want to get blood on the maple. This guitar is going to have enough mojo as it is. Okay, so what I've done there is I've gone in from quite a sharp angle from the top line, and I've just brought that edge back until it meets the line, but I'm not going anywhere near the bottom. And then I've come in again at a sharp angle and I've carved out to the bottom line, but that's left a hump in the middle. And then it's just a case of coming in at the actual angle that you want and removing that hump, which will leave you a nice, clean, flat facet. And I'm not sure if you can see from this range, but you're actually able to cut really accurately to your lines with a saw rasp. Okay, let's crack on and get the other half done. Okay, so that's the first pair of facets put in, one down each side. So the next operation is to halve all three of the facets that I've just created. And I'm going to do this by eye because it's not an exact science. And my facets are carved fairly consistently, so this will be relatively accurate. So I'm just going to use my finger as a fence and put a line down. So I shall do that on this side as well, and we can start carving again. Okay, so that went a little bit quicker. Probably took about 5 minutes to get that last section completed. And that's left us with kind of multiple facets now, which is getting somewhere near where we need to be. So the next thing I'm going to do is deal with the thickness of the neck, because now we can see we're a little bit thicker here than we need to be, but we're substantially thicker here. So what I'm going to do is concentrate on this central spine section now and bring that down until it's kind of roughly level with both of these areas, and then we can continue cutting away our facets until we get where we need to be. Okay, so that's the bulk of that waste along the back taken away now. Now you might be thinking, why did you wait until now to take it down to thickness? Simple answer is, I mean, I could have took that off on the bandsaw, but it's just a bit tricky with the shape of this neck. But also, having put some of the facets in, it just meant there was less material to take off the back there. So to continue with this, first thing I'm going to do is kind of, as close as I can, reinstate my centre line. And that will just give me something to work from. And then we're back to marking in some facets. Okay, so I've just spent about 5 or 10 minutes with the rough side of the rasp, getting the last of those facets cut in, and it actually got us quite close to where we needed to be with this. So then I've just switched to the finer side of the rasp and kind of started to transition this into a more rounded guitar neck shape. And we're pretty close now. There's a little bit of inconsistency along the spine. It's a little bit bumpy. So I'm just going to clean that up, and then we can switch to a block with some kind of coarse sandpaper on to start shaping this into the neck that we actually want. Okay, so I'll answer the burning question because I know it will come up in the comments anyway, and that is, what did I do to the finger? Well, I decided, in the name of science, to see just how sharp one of these Japanese flush cutting saws is. And after intensive research, I can confirm they are really, really sharp. Totally my own fault, didn't have both of my hands behind the sharp bit, one of the golden rules. Luckily it's not too bad a cut, didn't require a trip to the hospital, didn't need stitches or anything. So not ideal, could have been a lot worse. Okay, so I'm relatively happy with where we are now, but it's very rough, and there are still some inconsistencies, but they're the kind of things that I don't really want to tackle with the rasp. So all I'm going to do is, I've got a rubber sanding block, but it is very stiff and flat. And I've got a 60 grit sanding pad, which is very rough, but for me it's the golden rule in sanding is get the shape with a coarse abrasive, especially if you want to keep things flat. Once you've achieved that with the coarse stuff, you can then go finer and finer to get your finish. So in this case, I'm just going to spend a few minutes going over this with a 60 grit to kind of refine this shape even further. Okay, and then we have the rough shaping for the central section of the neck, kind of pretty much complete. You won't be able to see it on camera, but I can see it. You might be able to see it if I get the light bouncing off it in the right angle. But this is still kind of a little bit notchy. It's not completely perfectly smooth and round yet. But it's where we need it to be so we can get on with the next section, which is removing the material around the transitions. And it's very difficult to actually get this to a finished state until we've done that, because you need to kind of sand past where we're able to do so at the moment. So the next thing I'm going to do is break out a couple of chisels and start to remove this material around the heel and the headstock. But this video is getting long enough, so we'll save that to the next episode where we can really do it justice. I really feel like we're flying through this build now, and I'm getting quite close to the end. So that kind of makes me start thinking about what I'm going to be doing next. Obviously I've still got the great guitar build off 2021 guitar to be working on, but I'm also in the planning stages of a new build. So don't forget to hit the subscribe button and ring the bell to ensure that you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes. Like if you've liked, and I'll look forward to seeing you with the second part of this process very, very soon. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye bye.